Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. My name is Rotimi Itai, and I would like to welcome you all to the show this morning. And we're going to be having a great time. We have been having interesting conversations, especially on the subject matter series we've been having for some time now. And all things being equal, today as well, we're going to be having another great time. And on the Good Morning Education Show, we are always here Mondays to Sundays. Mondays to Fridays, you catch us 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And on Saturday, it's 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And obviously on Sunday, we move from morning till evening, and it is 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. All the time that I've said and mentioned right now is actually West African time. So if you're catching us from wherever across the world, because we're streaming from Lagos, Nigeria to West Africa to Africa and the entire world, please do not hesitate to just join us at the West African time and then convert the time to your own zone. And we always like to share um, our show with you, just like a breakfast. We always look forward to hearing from people out there. Your contributions matter a lot. So if you have contributions on the subject matter of the day, or the area of concerns, or the news element of the day, please do not hesitate to ask your questions and also make your contributions. We will beam your questions and we will make sure we address your questions. And we are always excited to receive feedback from our tribe members and also from our first timers on the show. We have people we call tribe members, people who consistently watch the show and engage and participate with us. Please do not hesitate to to ask you questions, and it's going to be a great time. We have something on the show that we normally use as our mantra. It's our message. It's our goodwill message. It's what we believe. It's what we value, and we always say it at the beginning, during, and most importantly, as we sign off on the end at the end of the show. We always say that it's always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. And today will not be different. We believe it's going to be a great morning for you. It's going to be a great morning for us. It's going to be a great morning for all of us on the Good Morning Education Show. And this morning, we will be having some interesting conversation, but be reminded that we have experts and analysts that join us from time to time who share their thoughts and expertise on the subject matter of the day so that we all get to learn together, we get to share together, and like I normally say, we also end up growing together. That's what the Good Morning Education Show is about. So if you know someone who should be watching the show today, this morning, please get them, nudge them, said something to them, say the Good Morning Education Show is here, started is live, and it's direct. And I believe we're going to have a great time, an awesome time indeed. And today we'll be talking about decentralizing our Ministry of Education back in the part of the world where we belong. We have what we call the Ministry of Education. And our thought and our concept that we're introducing today has to do with decentralization. We believe that one way or the other, um, we being able to tackle this and without attacking personalities will open us up to possibilities of things that we might need to look at and then also advise or counsel in our own way, things that will create what I call case for change. But before we do that, we know that the first thing we normally do is we tend to look at the headlines and then we try as much as possible um, to treat conversations along and around the headlines, so that we are able, to have a great time together. So remember, this is the Good Morning Education Show, and then we're starting right away. Okay, so our first headline today is coming from the angle of, well, or better still, complacency or complicity of the Permanent Secretary, Federal Minister of Education, in monumental mismanagement of Unilag. This is coming on the heels of the conversation, around the issues and the conversations within tertiary institutions, especially Unilag. We believe that this is quite an interesting one, and we hope that all things being equal, it gets sorted in good time. And all this past few weeks, we've been having a lot of conversations, that has been spotlighted or spotlighting the tertiary institutions, the real demand for not just change but transformation is something that we can't go back on, because I believe that this is very important, right? All right, so let's go to the second headline, which talks about an interesting conversation, and that's FG bans SS1, SS2 students from participating in WASE and NECO. Well, WASE, NECO, and NAPTEP, these are major examinations, especially that has to do with terminal classes. And we find sometimes some people try, in their own words, their luck, and try to see how, as it were, they're able to engage, in a critical way. So I think that that's very important for us to ask ourselves this question. Should this be encouraged? Should this be discouraged? Because we know that we're still battling with the issue of people in primary school trying to, create a quick, fast tracking of their primary education. And sometimes we get to see people in primary school who pretty much leave primary school from primary four just because they're able to ace exams. And they've now had a lot of outcry about this practice as being a bit detrimental to the total development of the people concerned. Because sometimes a lot of people could be good when it comes to academic, but then also in terms of total development, especially for those who jump into university at a very tender age, we tend to see that a lot of them get into that space and they get affected because sometimes socially they are not too mature for the environment and the exposure. And then it always turns down back to conversations around them being taken advantage of. The society is not even going to bother, to say that, well, you're young people, we know you're going to be treated as an adult. And sometimes we've heard of depression with students, and there's so much pressure for attainment. And I think this is why we begin to see people in SS1 are feeling that, look, if I can try to, ace an exam. So what it simply means is, what happens if a child scores all the required A's or the required credits in SS1? Does that mean that child is not going to continue with SS2 and SS3? Well, in some cases, you'll be shocked that that might be the case. So people are preparing themselves to, get themselves into a situation where they might not necessarily need to waste time, as we will put it. And of course, there might be also the consideration where we need to look at, could it be that is also a financial means of motivation, which simply means that if you have SS1, SS2 students getting ready for external exams like WAEC and they pass. So what happens is this. If they get to pass, a lot of them might not necessarily need to go through the hardship of seeking for funds for school fees. So I think that there are many things that obviously these things are kind of connected to, and it's sad that this is the reality we are painting for education, and this is the challenges that we are facing. But we need to deal with this, you know. So that's what I believe, and I think that's what will help us to be able to get along. Let's just take another headline. And well, I would say that to a large extent, I agree with the decision, but we also need to take a more strategic and holistic view, on this conversation. And as we do that, I'd like to welcome a very, 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 very loyal tribe member. Show you. And thank you for joining. Welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. And maybe one of these days, I think you should get ready because we're going to bring you on the show and you're going to join us on this other side as opposed to being on that other side. And let's get to hear and feel your pulse on the conversations that we're having from the day, because I know you have a lot to share as well. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to go straight to another headline. And this time around, it's coming from the dailypost.ng. Indecent dressing. Ondo Varsity vows to rusticate students over nose rings, braids, and others. Now, this is where I wish the ladies were here so that they could actually tackle this conversation. And let's look at it from how do I put it now? Let's look at it from the views of the ladies, because I'm a guy and I might not be able to say that much. But there are some things that I totally believe that the university has the power and has the right motive to address. But I also believe that in addressing things that has to be behavioral or attitudinal, we must not limit these things to sanctions and rules and regulation. The world is far, far, far advanced than that. So sanctions do not necessarily interpret compliance. In fact, sometimes what happens is that sanctions causes people to test boundaries because most of these things that we create rules for, there are no end-to-end system in place for that, you know. So I believe that the university needs to do that. But on the other hand, I think we also need to understand that we are dealing with adults and the university community. We need to also categorize certain things. When a system like an higher institution is not totally upfront with what is expected of people in terms of those who come into their environment. Once you take fees before you give rules, I feel that that is defrauding the people, because as people make choice of universities, they make choice of university based on the courses those university offers, most times not based on the climate of their rules and regulation. And if at all that's a factor, then you must make it known that XYZ University is a university that has certain values that they uphold. It's not a university that is freestyle. Especially, we see this very clear in faith-based universities. And they put it out clear that, look, if you are coming here, this is the world that we have. And because of the kind of world that we have, you have to comply. So it's not strange when we see them enforce certain rules. Yes, we all might not accept them, but trust me, getting into university is like a contract. There's an offer of admission, and then the person is accepting admission. But then you see, when we look at some of our federal universities and our state universities, we also need to understand that it is important for us to balance the divide. People who come into the university are not, permit me to use the word, they are not meant to just be seen as students. They are clients. And I hope we begin to understand that universities are service providers. Society where you don't have a will, or they don't have a say. That's totally not true. Students have a will. Students have a will. Students have a way. And this is because a lot of us have translated that the fact that most times people who are in a setting are older than the others, they must also have their way. I don't totally agree to that. I believe that it will be better if we have a lot of people begin to respect you, whether they are young or not young. The fact that once someone has paid for a service, we must keep up to the side of the bargain. We also know that there are extremes, and this is where dialogue conversation, onboarding, and orientation should be critically taken serious. Listen, I think that the university has the power to make sure that the enrollment and the onboarding of every new, you know, um, every new entrant as someone who comes into the university must be seriously done. In fact, those onboarding and enrollment, they are not experiential. So a lot of people don't even mind. A lot of people don't even participate. And sometimes it can be factored to be mandatory, you know, to matriculation, mandatory to get your matric number, mandatory to a lot of things. And people will comply. And in that period, we have people dialogue. So what now I have as a question is, so what happens to those who have some peculiarities? Let me give you an example. I don't know where that thing for the others are, but when we say nose rings, braids, others. So it means that it might be based on private interpretation. There will be room for victimization when this occurs. Because if I am conservative, there are certain things I would not do. Doesn't make those things wrong. But I might now come across as so hard on those who are not conservative. The same thing when I see someone who, maybe someone who is extroverted or someone who is not conservative, he sees a conservative person, he will have trouble. And we need to understand that. I think that we need to train ourselves to know how to live with each other because there are more things to focus on and to enforce and some peculiarities. Let me give you an example. There are people, I once worked with someone who had tattoos all over her body. But then she got to work in a bank. And when we're asked to when we're asked to work on weekends, she was more loyal to the weekend work. And then she'll come out and all that. But because it's weekend, she's not totally dressed in a corporate way. So there are times that it's possible for you to spot the tattoo. Now, think about it from this angle. Somebody sees a lady in tattoo. And then automatically says, how can this organization employ this individual? Now, the truth of the matter is, if you go for a general interview, nobody's going to ask you to undress. Nobody's going to ask you if you have tattoos. Most likely, nobody's going to ask you that. At least on the scale of 1 to 10, you probably might be 1 out of 10, and you now place that tattoo over the expertise of that person, over the competence of that person. You will not judge accurately, right? Because there are people that are not with tattoos who don't even have near the skills of such people. Now, so what am I trying to say? Is sometimes a sensitive issue that must be taken and treated in a very sensitive manner, in a careful manner, that we don't get to run um, and destroy things while we, in the name of trying to build things. Pretty much that's my own thought. So I think that that would be a good way to put that. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the next headline. The next headline is pamphlet recommends core members pay ransom if kidnapped. Okay, pamphlet recommends core members pay ransom if kidnapped. It's fake. NYC reacts. Well, this is another headline that reminds us of our peculiarities in the part of the world, where people try to promote fake news and also people exploiting people based on the security concerns. So I just hope that this insecurity issue is actually tackled with urgency because it's really, really permeating into the fabric of society and it's affecting a lot of us. And the core members, for example, I'm sure the scare they would have gotten from that, that's enough to dissuade people from trying to stay in their primary place of assignment. All right, so let's get to the next headline. Kogi Poly demotes lecturer, sacks another over gross misconduct. I think this is a time to sanitize the industry, especially the tertiary institution. There's a huge sanitization going on. And I think that we can credit some of this to um, what would you call it? We can credit some of this to the uh, the trend and the viral nature of some things that have gone on social media. So a lot has been happening within the space, and most people are now becoming very vocal, sometimes backed with evidence. And it's now like, in a way, we are having some excesses being brought to the front burner, and we are now seeing that lecturers are actually getting accountable, and the system is holding them accountable because it's not like those days where it's just them and then they are the demigods and the high and mighty and they have their way, and a lot of victimization takes place. Nobody's thinking of corporate governance, nobody's thinking of ethics, nobody's thinking of the right thing to do. Everyone's just acting in their own vein, in their own way. I think that that's very important, So, well, it's unfortunate that the lecturer has to position himself to be demoted and others are even sacked. You know, I think that we need to begin to also focus not just on orientation of students, but lecturers as well. We need them to be able to get to know that they are occupying a very sensitive position that cannot, just be used at will. Yeah. And then, of course, the last headline for the day, excuse me, Modibo Adama University admits 3,141 students for 2020-2021 session. That's Modibo Adama University, right? Um, and that's a very huge number, I must say. And we'll pretty much say congratulations to them. But at the same time, and also say well done on their admission drive. I think that trying to position yourself as having a huge community also helps with enrollment, you know, because if you look at it, um, enrollment sometimes people are looking at if they're not going to be the only students in their own faculty or in their own department. They don't want a situation where they're just four in a department. So sometimes posting numbers like this gives people a sense of, oh, it's a community and it's actually growing. And then it helps influence decision on enrollment. So well done and congratulations to them on their admission and enrollment. So, and on that note, we're going to go straight to the conversation of the day. And I believe that it's going to be a great time. I'll try as much as possible to, do a back and forth, engaging and reflection. And then, of course, like I said, if you have questions, please do not hesitate. If you have comments or contributions, please feel free to do that. So today we'll be talking about decentralizing our Ministry of Education. Decentralizing our Ministry of Education. I'm just going to start by saying that the Ministry of Education is an organ of state, is an arm, is an institution, is an agency that has been set up to, govern and regulate and administer the affairs of education, you know. And in Nigeria, to be precise, we have the Federal Ministry of Education. That's at the federal level. We also have state ministries of education. And honestly speaking, when we think about the word decentralizing our Ministry of Education, then it has actually have to mean that there's been a measure of dynamism in the way they work. There's been an approach with which they work that we pretty much will say that it might need some tweaking, it might need some review, where we begin to think about it that our ministries seem to be too centralized. And one of the ways you can see that is to a large extent, there's been interventions and there's been the district offices, which is a bit to design itself to be closer to people. But I think that one of the reasons why I think there should be a think through and a review on decentralization is because we must understand the function of certain kind of institution and the peculiarities of those institutions cannot just be limited to offices and addresses. And when I say officer addresses, by the current structure. Yes, we know that it's easier to be closer to the people using district offices, but how heavily functional are district offices? In what capacity? How many people know them? Do they serve enough? You know, and those are things that we need to ask ourselves. It helps us in planning. It helps us with planning. And when we think about the Ministry of Education, we must decentralize in terms of location. We also must decentralize in terms of engagement. While we might need more offices or we might need relatable functional offices, we must also think about their function and their engagement. We need to also understand that there might be need for us to decentralize engagement so that we can drive and reposition education. That's the goal. Um, Sometimes we place status quo above the positioning that is required. And this is why sometimes it still looks and still feels like it's still so much expensive or is so much cost driven to drive and build education. I think decentralization is a must. And we must begin to talk about it and begin to dialogue about it to see in what practical ways can this be achieved, right? So I'm not here to point the fingers. I'm just here to raise questions, to raise ideas, you know. Um, so those are the things that I think that those are things that I feel that can help shape perspective for every one of us, and especially when we look at the kind of demands of today, decentralization is no more an option. It's actually a must. And when people think about it and probably are asking, Mr. Itai, what do you mean by decentralization? Let's just look at the word. Centralization is almost like a consolidation of you are putting everything in the center, right? And things cannot happen without the center. But when you begin to think about it, there are things that can happen when there are things that are decentralized. And we begin to look at it in terms of even looking at the standards or standardization, the quest for standardizing things, that in itself requires a lot of penetration. And sometimes you see that there are some areas that are not well serviced in terms of infrastructural development and all those things. We need a more inclusive Ministry of Education that sometimes can take into consideration certain people who are having voices, some people who are having passion and skill and intervention within the sector, who could also be a part of the DNA of that of that ministry. And that way it helps to build a collective growth. Because I'm looking at education, especially in Nigeria and Africa, as a a space in need of not just intervention, but a space in need of intervention, a space in need of reformation. But then the space must be nurtured because it's going to be the critical element of driving development for the nation. And the development that we seek, I can tell you that in partnership with all the organs of state and ministries and all that, we begin to see them actually penetrate because at the end of the day, you find out that the political parties, they need the Ministry of Education. You find out that the industries and organizations, they need the Ministry of Education. And everyone begins to plug in and begin to see the role that they play towards advancing development. And also the ministry will begin to provide information and resource. I think this is where we need to begin to think about. Decentralization doesn't mean that they should have less power. Doesn't mean that we are taking power from the center, or doesn't mean that we're saying that we should have a less powerful commissioner or a less powerful minister. We're saying that there has to be that touch point, touch point where, there are places and rural areas that say they've never even seen the ministry officials for over 2 years, in some cases 3 years, some people in 1 year. And these are things that probably could be achieved every month, once a month, or every term, once a term. So these are our thoughts today. We don't have the right, as it were. Let me use it. We don't have the right, but we might not be able to say some things on the platform right now, in absolutes. But it's just for us to begin to ask: could it be better? Could things get better? Could things get achieved? I think yes, it could be better. It can be better. I think things will get achieved. I think that it will also open us up to see the need of actually driving for skill development, because you'll be shocked at a centralized level, you might not identify the people who are just faffing around, the people who are loafing, people who are just hiding under some programs and some specific items and activities, some people who are being shielded by their principles. But by the time you look at it and it's decentralized, you will now understand what you're truly dealing with, because then you can easily know whether an area is functional or not. You can know whether there are skill deficits. You can know where there are skill trainings and needs and all those things to be done. These are things and measures that we put in place to begin to, and listen, one of the things that we realize is that it becomes a model to follow and to practice. And at this point, let me welcome Olushola Olumide.
Yes. Good morning, Tayo. I'm doing fine. Yes. Good morning to our tribe members.
Have you had your program or you're about to have your program?
I'm in the studio. So I just let me come in. My session starts by 9. So I say, okay, let me come online.
Let's see so that you guys Yeah, welcome to the show. We are talking on decentralizing our ministry.
Good morning. Yes.
So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this and probably share your views, as it were.
The question again?
Decentralizing our Ministry of Education. We're talking about decentralizing our Ministry of Education.
Yes, I think for me, I think it's a way to go down to the grassroots. That makes it closer to the players in the industry. I think generally when we deal with government, the bureaucracy, the bottlenecks becomes too much that at times the process almost frustrates you from getting anything done. And I feel when we're talking about regulators are there because they are having something or people to regulate. If for any reason anything is impeding the work they are supposed to do, I think there is no point being there. Accessibility is key. Things should be done to time. Okay, somebody want to register a school, somebody has a complaint, the quality control. There are a lot of things the Ministry of Education is meant to do. But if you go in there and you are not sure your records will be attended to in the next 6, 9, or 12 months, it becomes a problem. And where there is no accessibility, the bottlenecks will end up breeding corruption. People who are bent on getting something done to time will pay anything to get it done. So I think it should be decentralized. It should be made to be efficient. Probably we do things online and you attended to, somebody calls you and say, oh, we saw your form, this and this happened. Okay, can you come over so they come around if they need to assess your property, the environment, see situation of things, and almost within 24 hours, you're able to get a report. If you are not doing things where they tell you to your face, you are not doing things where go do this, go do that, go do this. We'll come back and check. And within the space of 1 month, the whole thing is sorted out. But if we have to go through a long queue, the bottlenecks, like I was saying jokingly 2 days ago, there are a lot of issues that are snowballing to prayer point in Nigeria that shouldn't have even become a prayer point. So I think it should be decentralized. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Because also when you have the opportunity to interact with some Ministry of Education, especially at the state level, you begin to see that there are different nomenclatures to certain departments, and their functions are so sensitive. So it makes you see that it's like ministries have now been wired to be more how do you put it now? To be more like reservoirs. So they are used to getting to receive people, getting for people to need them, getting for people to come to them, where they are not seeing themselves as a service-based organization. And a service-based organization needs to realize that there's a front end for that organization as much as there's a back end of that organization. So we need to begin to think about it, because decentralization is the only way that will create the front end effect as much as we have the back end effect. When people at the back end are saddled with responsibility of the front end and they are not wired or trained for it, they don't treat that front end element of service with priority. They don't treat it with care. They don't treat it with value, regardless of whatever people can say. That's where you hear the word principality. That's where you hear, because things that should be simple and normal becomes perceived as a favor. But when we are service based in orientation, in policy and practice, we begin to treat those things in such a way and manner that we understand that it's an obligation. It is their right. The people in the state and the citizens of the state, the practitioners in the state have a right to be informed, have a right to be consulted, have a right to be reviewed. I had this conversation with someone that, let's use, for example, this issue of unified calendar. There are many things that people say about, oh, this and this and that, but you see, sometimes you can also see the effect of not having something decentralized. And because a lot of times you have people definitely you were the one informed about their model of education. There are certain schools that are practicing the British curriculum, for example, and they are preparing people for them to be able to get into schools outside the country. There are certain times that they will open, there are certain times they will close. They are wired for that. So when you give a blanket information, you don't want people to feel some people are special or some people are favored over the others. No, you must be able to articulate it to say that, okay, these people have A, they have B, they have C. And these are the reasons. If you are not under this catchment area or catchment category, then you must comply with this, so that it shows that it's a thinking and functional organization that is service-based with service orientation. And we can also appraise them as well. You see, I feel that it's sometimes a bit hypocritical if we can regulate the people, but we cannot be regulated. So the question is, how do we regulate the regulators? And this is this is the truth. Yeah, because I've written
Ah,
articles several times. I've said, for example, I said, okay, so if we can have report cards for every term, I think we should be able to have report cards for our commissioners of education, since they sit over. So when it comes to secondary and primary school concern, they should give report of their impact, not over a tenure of political appointment, but it should be over termly, over termly period. So, for example, a commissioner can say, oh, between September and December, this is how we fared for schools. And then session by session, that's the first semester, second semester for university, the tertiary department of the Ministry of Education will come forth and present and say, this is what we need to do with the first semester of the tertiary institutions. That way, you will see that all those things that fall into blind spots, all those things that hide, you begin to see. Because at the end of the day, if you didn't do much in first term, you know, maybe you just did much in 3 months of the year and you have 12 months. Why are we fooling ourselves? I don't know. So let's come back to that question.
You are right. For me, regulating the regulator, I will want to start from issue of proper reorientation and attitudinal overhauling. As you are talking, what comes to mind is that if you have received mail from overseas, even your request is being declined, but when you see the tone with which you are handed over a rejection letter, you're probably going to have a sort of soothing effect of the way the mail is worded. And until we shift away from the mentality of we are here, nothing can happen, we are here, we shift to service orientation. For me, I normally tell people, even when I attend to students, at times some of them feel edgy. You know, somebody walks into your office, oh, can you please have your seat? How are you? How is everything? Do you care for pure water? Then some of them will be looking at you and say, sorry, are you here to set me up? They say, no, I'm not setting you up. I just want you to be comfortable. But there's this entitlement mentality that is enshrined within the heart of many people and feel, because I'm in this office, I can do and undo. Which right have you got to even query me in the first place? Somebody has asked just an innocent question. Why is it taking long for my request to be attended to? Oh, sorry, there was a glitch in network. Oh, sorry, we have issue with power. Oh, sorry, it was transmitted to my office late. Oh, sorry, the person that was supposed to work on your this thing went on leave or maternity, because we were able to reassign somebody. Simple answer. Then somebody feels offended and say, by the way, who are you? Why are you asking me? Why is it taking long for your phone to be okay? For that, I will make sure I will not attend to you. Then you begin to wonder, that question, the person didn't slap you. He didn't curse your father or your mother. He only asked an innocent question. That is how terrible or how bad the mindset of a lot of people who are in positions appear to be in this climb. So to regulate them, I think no amount of theory will help until there is a complete overhauling of the mindset of the people in power. And people feel you have to use your position or authority to subjugate other people. They have to bow and respect you by force. And it's not it. And maybe we should begin to hold people accountable, just as you have said. What have you done? What have you not done? But at times, when you even try to take matters up, you are trying to report, you may find it difficult, you find it funny that the person you are reporting to is worse than the person that offended you in the first place. So I think it should get to that point. That should be a clear cut of information dissemination. People should be reached real time. Oh, this is the reason why this has not been done. Somebody has sent in a request, 3 months, has not had anything. Nobody is communicating to the person. The person is just, in the dark. If that thing has not been attended to, somebody can send a message or put a call through or send text message or whatever. Say, so and so, we receive your request so day. We are working on it. Very soon, we'll get back to you. You can imagine how relieved that person will be. It shows that what you have even sent got to the right place. So I feel regulating the regulator, we need complete mind overhauling. Then we need to begin to hold regulators accountable. And regulators should realize that they are not alpha and omega. They are supposed to be servants of the people. If they are civil servants, if they are going to go by that nomenclature, they are meant to serve the people. And when your server or your maid or your house help is beginning to lord it over you, then something is wrong. So we should have that servanthood mentality, a servant leader, and be held accountable, you should be able to communicate to people and tell them why this is done, why that is not done. And until we get to that point, it may be difficult to regulate the regulators. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You really opened that, and as we try to bring this to a close, there are two things that we need to address. Number one is the fact that abuse always prevails when people are not responsible or people are not driven by benchmarks. And that's why you find out that there is a real need for regulators to be out there to regulate those who are practicing. And even when people do not do things as they should, or they probably circumvent the system, it will take a higher level of creativity and innovation and sharp practice to get to do that at the point of being accountable. Because you cannot say that you did XYZ, in November, and you're reporting again that you did it in January, and people will spot you out. Like they
Yes.
say, it takes a bigger lie to cover an existing lie.
Yes.
And this is really and I think the world needs to sense and feel that there's something happening. There are so many shortcuts. Well, let me not use the word shortcut, quick wins, I would rather say, that we can have, that people will just feel that there's something these guys are doing. And all they just need to see is our disposition, our tone, our response, and our agenda. They don't even need to wait to see the result before they begin to toe the line to say, you know what, these things could change, these things can change. And as we bring this to a close, let me just ask you this. What would you be looking forward to in the area of decentralization, especially when this ministry gets decentralized? What would you be looking forward to? Maybe there are just one or two specifics. Please share with us.
Thank you for that question. For me, if it's not going to be business as usual, if it's not just going to lead to proliferation of offices, titles, and nomenclatures, I think as we decentralize, the personnel should be well trained. Yes, they should be trained on what they are expected to do. And there should be a clear-cut job description as to what you need to do. Then, for me, the people who patronizes the Ministry of Education should be spoken to, warned, and be told to follow due process. Because if you think people in government are bad, the populace appear to be worse. If you are trying to, this is what will be done now we are closer to you people, information is going out, this is how things should be done per time. Some people feel, where did you bring that person? Doesn't he know us? I'm talking about the populace now. Do we have to go through all that? Even when we go to the state headquarters, we know how fast things are done. What they are talking about is that they want to rub their irresponsibility on you as an officer. Don't bet to that. Yes, they will bring it. That is how terrible our system is. But they should be trained, and there should be whatever pasted here and there. This is the procedure. Then probably maybe we should also gravitate towards online process. Yes, there may still be face-to-face, one or two, but the initial process should be online so that everybody knows I have to go online, do this. Then when you are called upon, you come over. A very typical example is Nigeria immigration system now. Look at it now. You can apply for your passport or for renewal online, even though that appear to not to favor a lot of people. Like somebody was telling me, you walk into the passport office, somebody approaches you, hey, who is helping you? By the time you say you have applied online, they just run away from you as if you are a leper.
Are you there?
They came to you not because they were interested in you. They came to you in the first place, not because they wanted to help you, but because of what they will get. Now they find out that you have applied online, so you are not one of their big fat cow. They just leave you stranded and go back to their duty post. So we should embrace online process to start with, and there should be training training and retraining, training and retraining of the people. And there should be information. People should have access to information, what should be done, how it should be done. And we should step up our game. Quality control, service delivery, client or customer relations, all those things should be upgraded so that we will not just have multiple offices, only for us to also multiply the evil that we are trying to avoid or trying to solve. Thank you very much.
On that note, I believe that we can draw the curtains on the show today. It's an interesting topic, and hopefully we'll have another chance to deal with that or dissect on that properly. Thank you, Olusola Olumide, for this time, and I know that you're
Thank
getting
you.
ready
Yes,
to go
I'm
and
getting
deliver
I'm getting ready.
million
Yes.
to hear the word this morning. So we wish you all the best on the show. And of course, like we say,
Thank you.
at the end of the show, you know, there's that our saying on the show, we believe it's something that you experience. It's always a great morning. So you make it a great morning on the radio show there.
Oh, yes.
Great people that make things great. So on the count of two, let's just have that sign off and then we'll let you go. So 1, 2, go. It's
always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. Bye.
Back tomorrow, everybody. Bye. Have a great day.